Welcome to Grassroots Radio Colorado. This is Chris Cook, and I've got Andy Pates, co-host. Andy Pate, co-hosting with me. Well, I started to say sitting in studio, and then I wanted to say co-hosting, and I changed my mind halfway through the word. So anyway, Andy, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. It's good to be here with you.
Glad that you're here. This is fun. We always have a good time. And I love the discussions that we get into, because what we're going to be discussing tonight is like my current obsession. This is the thing that I wake up at 2 a.m. and say, oh, I got to write that down. You know, I am absolutely obsessing right now about chocolate. No, I mean about rebranding the GOP. We've got chocolate in studio because I told your lovely wife, Corey, to send your meds with you. And so she sent chocolate. Yeah. We have lots of chocolate.
There's lots of chocolate in here.
But rebranding
Our mouths are just, it's all over. We look like 4-year-old kids. It's embarrassing.
It's going to be very interesting by the time we get to the end of the show.
Oh, yes.
So rebranding the GOP, this is why I wanted to talk to you about this, because you're my go-to guy on a lot of this stuff. You're my messaging guy. And I wanted to have a more unstructured conversation with you, kind of about how do we do this? How do we reach out? And how do we, I've got two purposes that I'm looking at here. Obviously, we have a schism in the GOP, in the Republican Party. And
really?
Really? You haven't noticed?
No.
What rock have you been living under? No, it's, obviously we have the Tea Party in the Liberty camp,
right.
The constitutional conservatives like you and me. And then we have the establishment folks, for want of a better word. And, the folks who have basically said, like Jeb Bush, we don't need conservatives to win the White House. We don't need that grassroots movement. We don't need that Liberty camp. And who, for all intents and purposes, appear to do everything they can to just shove us out of the way in this juggernaut to try to get to the White House.
Right.
And so one of my purposes in life, I mean, truly, this is something that drives me every day, is how do you heal that? How do you get those two sides to work together? And we talk about that a lot here on Grassroots Radio Colorado. And we talk about trying to reach out, or do we just destroy them, or, trying to work our way through that problem, through that war, for want of a better word. And then, of course, the other idea is that the GOP itself needs to reach out to that mass of voters in the middle who don't count themselves as being very political, who don't immerse themselves in this stuff like we do, who aren't waking up at 5 a.m. and reading all the news sites and watching Fox News at the same time and writing about it and, blogging about it and texting about it and messaging about it and in 20 different Facebook groups talking about it.
So you're saying we've got to reach all the normals.
We have to reach the normals.
Okay.
The muggles.
Exactly.
So we have to reach the unaffiliated. We have to reach the people who are completely disillusioned with the system, and who really don't see any difference between Democrats and Republicans, and possibly understandably so. Is there really a differentiating factor? And so that's why I keep coming back to rebranding as my metaphor. I mean, and not really even a metaphor. It's a true thing. We do need to brand the Republican Party differently than it is being branded right now. The brand promise is tarnished, to say the least. It has been tarnished by last several presidential candidates and several other lesser office candidates that have run. And so we need to find a way to incorporate both of these things. I'm trying to pull the Tea Party and the establishment together and get both of those camps, the GOP as a whole, to reach out to that vast middle, the middle of the country that says, we really don't care who we vote for. We're still going to get screwed in the end. Thoughts?
Well, it's impossible, Chris. It's all over. If I were you, I'd give up and
buy a sailboat and just go.
Well, there are a lot of people who talk that way on both sides. There are people in the establishment who look at the Tea Party and say, I can't work with them. They're too hateful. They're too mean. They're too this. They're too that. They're too demanding. And they're so willing to just cut and run at a moment's notice. And I'm just like, when you do power tripping, like what happened in Mississippi, like what happened with money coming in from the national into our state affecting Tom's race,
right?
And stuff like that. That affects us. Okay, I think the big thing that we need to do first is stop looking at each other for a second and look at our audience.
Okay.
What is this audience that we're trying to reach? Then we can say, how do we reach them? And can we do that together?
Okay. Well, we as the Tea Party have two audiences that we're dealing with then. Because we're dealing with the establishment. They're one audience.
Okay, but I'm looking at the wider audience.
And looking out at the rest of the electorate, that's another audience.
I'm looking at the audience outside the conservative movement, whatever you would consider it. And the establishment does consider themselves part of it, even though they would disagree with me on a number of things.
They consider themselves part of the conservative movement?
Yeah, the left side of it, but yeah. So, well, generally that's how they would proudly look at it. So here's what I would do. I would first look at our audience. We have to be realistic about this nation that we're trying to reach. Let me ask you three things, okay? When we're looking at most Americans today, you see, we think that we can just bring our message and they'll run to it.
Right.
Well, they did with Reagan. Look, they didn't in a lot of cases with Reagan. First of all, Reagan was fabulous. I think he was the greatest president ever.
Right.
I'm very biased here. But he adapted his message to his surroundings at the time, and he would do so today.
He adapted his message.
His message, not his principles.
Right.
Exactly. But first look at the audience. Number one, is our audience, the American people, are they taught by constitutionalists or are they taught by a public education system?
Public education system.
Okay, number two, are they informed by constitutionalists or are they informed by a left-wing media?
Left-wing media.
Okay, number three, are they influenced by constitutionalists or are they influenced by the entertainment industry?
Entertainment industry.
Okay, so we're dealing with an entire nation of people who are taught, influenced, and informed by the other side. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say is this. Message to both the Tea Party and the establishment. We're in enemy territory. Our ship, the good ship conservative movement, is in enemy territory. Even when we win an election, they still hold the strongholds that are mobilizing public thought.
Right.
There is no room for us to be fighting on our ship. Now, does that mean we can't disagree? No, we must disagree. But we are sending the wrong message to people outside the movement.
We must disagree?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Explain that.
Because we're going to have different opinions, and we must have the freedom to experience those opinions.
I agree.
Now, I'll go into this a little bit more in the second section. But can I introduce now what I'm talking about with the far side thing?
Yeah.
Okay. See, what I want conservatism to become far side conservatism.
Like Gary Larson far side.
Exactly. First of all, we are pretty bizarre. Okay, to begin with. Okay, we are. And we're pretty weird. But I always look at two cartoons when I was growing up, and I actually did cartoonistry for a while. That's why it's important to me. The Far Side, and do you remember Doonesbury?
Yes.
That, it's hard left wing and all this.
Yes.
But did you notice that when you looked at those two, before you even read them, your eyes were drawn into the Far Side cartoon. You wanted to be in there.
Right.
Okay? You were not drawn into Doonesbury, and here's why. There were a million lines. It's very complex looking. All right? You can't get a hold of all that.
Right.
Conservatism, you don't feel invited in with Doonesbury. You feel invited in with the Far Side. And we'll talk about that in the second section of why that is. I don't want to get too deep into it now.
Okay.
But you'll find when we do, we're going to find that, number one, we can without throwing away our principles, we can very easily draw people in using a Far Side approach instead of Doonesbury approach. And secondly, we'll like each other more in the process.
Sounds like a tall order, man.
No, we can do it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you have any thoughts on this? I know that you do. Give us a call, 303-477-5600. This is Kris Cook. I've got Andy Pate in studio, and you're listening to Grassroots Radio Colorado on KLZ 560.